It was around 1:40 a.m. when everything started. I remember the time clearly because I had just looked at my phone before turning off the lights. I had been watching random videos for hours trying to fall asleep. My apartment was small and quiet, located on the edge of town. Normally, nights were peaceful there. Too peaceful. That night felt different, though. I couldn't explain why. There was this strange feeling in my stomach, like something wasn't right. I finally put my phone down and turned off the lamp next to my bed. The room went completely dark, and for a few minutes, everything was silent. Until I heard something, a knock. At first, I thought I imagined it, but then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks on my front door. My eyes opened immediately. I checked my phone again, 2:03 a.m. Nobody ever came to my apartment that late. I stayed in bed, hoping whoever it was would leave. But the knocking continued, slow, patient, like whoever was outside knew I was inside. After about 30 seconds, it stopped. I waited. The silence felt heavier than before. Then suddenly, my phone vibrated. A notification appeared. It was a text message from an unknown number. The message read, "I know you're awake." My heart immediately started racing. I stared at the message for a few seconds. Then another one appeared. "Open the door." I felt a cold chill run down my back. I hadn't told anyone where I lived yet. I had only moved into that apartment 2 weeks earlier. I slowly got out of bed and walked toward the front door. Every step felt heavier than the last. I looked through the peephole. The hallway outside was empty. The light flickered slightly, but there was nobody there. Then my phone vibrated again. Another message. "Don't use the peephole." I froze. There was no way someone could know I was looking through the door, unless they were standing somewhere I couldn't see. I stepped back from the door immediately. Then something happened that made my blood run cold. I heard footsteps, not outside, inside my apartment hallway. Slow footsteps, moving toward the living room. I turned around quickly. The hallway was dark, completely empty. My breathing got heavier. I grabbed the kitchen knife from the counter and held it tightly. Then I heard something else, a whisper, soft, almost impossible to hear, but it was definitely inside the apartment. The whisper said, "You shouldn't have moved here." I ran back to my bedroom and locked the door. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the knife. My phone vibrated again. Another message from the unknown number. "You're making this harder." Then another message came. "Check your closet." I slowly turned my head toward the closet door. It was slightly open, just a small crack. I was sure I had closed it earlier. The apartment felt unbearably quiet. I walked slowly toward it. Every step felt like walking through water. When I reached the closet, I grabbed the handle. My hand was shaking. I pulled the door open quickly. Nothing, just clothes hanging inside. I let out a long breath. For a moment, I thought maybe someone was just messing with me, maybe a prank. Then my phone vibrated again. Another message. This one only had 2 words. "Wrong closet." I stared at the screen, then slowly looked toward the hallway again, because there was another closet there, the hallway closet. And that's when I noticed something. The hallway light was now on. I definitely hadn't turned it on. I slowly walked toward the hallway. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The closet door was closed, but something underneath the door caught my attention. A shadow, something moving behind the door. My breathing stopped. Then I heard it. A slow scratching sound from inside the closet, like fingernails dragging across the wood. And then the whisper came again, this time louder, right behind the door. "Open it!" I ran back into my room and locked the door again. Then I called the police. The operator answered and asked what was happening. Before I could explain, the scratching sound stopped. The apartment became completely silent again. Then I heard something that made my entire body freeze. 3 knocks. But this time, the knocks came from inside my bedroom door. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. They searched the entire apartment, every room, every closet, every window. But they found nothing. No sign anyone had ever been inside. No broken locks, no open windows, nothing. But before they left, one of the officers asked me something strange. He asked, "Did you recently change your phone number?" I said no. He showed me something on his tablet. The messages I received that night didn't come from any phone number. The sender was listed as unknown device inside the apartment network. I moved out the next morning, but sometimes late at night, I still receive a message from the same unknown sender, and it always says the same thing. I'm still inside. I used to work as a taxi driver on the night shift. Most people avoid driving at night, but for me it was actually the best time to work. The roads were empty, the traffic was light, and sometimes the fares were better. My shift usually started around 9 p.m. and ended around 4 in the morning. Over time, I got used to the strange atmosphere of late-night driving, the empty streets, the flickering streetlights, the occasional passenger trying to get home after a long night. But one night about 2 years ago, something happened that made me quit that job forever. It was around 3:12 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had just checked the clock on my dashboard. I was parked near a gas station waiting for a ride request when my phone buzzed. A new ride had appeared on the app. Normally at that hour, most rides came from bars or the airport, but this request was different. The pickup location was on Old River Road, about 15 minutes outside the city. I hesitated for a moment. That road was pretty isolated, but the fare was higher than usual, so I accepted the ride. The drive there was quiet. The city lights slowly disappeared behind me as the road became darker and emptier. After about 10 minutes, the GPS directed me onto a narrow road surrounded by trees. There were no houses, no other cars, just darkness and the sound of my tires on the pavement. Finally, I reached the pickup location. According to the app, the passenger should have been waiting near the roadside, but when I stopped the car, there was no one there. I checked the app again. The location was correct. I looked around, nothing but trees and darkness. Just as I was about to cancel the ride, someone knocked on the passenger side window. The sound was sudden and loud. I nearly jumped out of my seat. Standing next to the car was a tall man wearing a long dark coat. I had no idea where he had come from. The road had been completely empty just a second earlier. I rolled down the window slightly. "Are you the one who requested the ride?" I asked. The man nodded slowly. His face looked pale under the dim streetlight. Without saying another word, he opened the back door and got into the car. As soon as he sat down, something felt wrong. The temperature inside the car suddenly felt colder. I tried to ignore it and started the trip. "Where are we headed?" I asked. The man spoke in a quiet voice. "Cedar Hill." That was about 20 minutes away, so I started driving. For the first few minutes, the ride was completely silent. The passenger didn't move. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't even look out the window. He just sat there, still. Then suddenly the radio turned on. Static filled the car. I quickly turned it off. "Sorry about that," I said. But the passenger didn't respond. A few seconds later, he spoke. "You're not the first driver tonight." I glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "What do you mean?" I asked. His eyes were fixed on the window. "The others didn't finish the ride." I laughed nervously. Maybe they canceled. But the passenger didn't laugh. Instead, he slowly turned his head toward the mirror, and for the first time I saw his eyes clearly. They looked empty, almost lifeless. I quickly looked back at the road. A few minutes passed, then I noticed something strange. The GPS started glitching. The route kept changing. The screen flickered. I tapped it a few times, but it didn't fix the problem. Then the passenger spoke again. "We're almost there." I looked at the GPS again, but according to the map, we were still far from Cedar Hill. Confused, I glanced at the rearview mirror, and my heart nearly stopped. The back seat was empty. The passenger was gone. I slammed the brakes. The car stopped in the middle of the road. I turned around quickly. No one was there. The back door was still closed. There was no way he could have gotten out without me noticing. My hand started shaking. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from the ride app appeared. Passenger has arrived at destination. I stared at the screen. The destination listed was not Cedar Hill. Instead, it said Old River Cemetery. And that's when I realized something. I had unknowingly stopped right next to a small road leading into a cemetery. The entrance gate was visible just a few meters ahead. My entire body felt cold. I immediately drove away as fast as I could. The next morning, I checked the ride history in the app. The passenger's name was still listed. Out of curiosity, I searched his name online, and what I found made my stomach drop. 7 years earlier, a man with the same name had died in a car accident. The accident happened on Old River Road, late at night, right near the cemetery, and according to the report, he had been a taxi passenger when the crash happened. After that night, I never worked another night shift again, but sometimes when I open the ride app, I still see something strange. A ride request from Old River Road at exactly 3:12 a.m. every year on the same date, and no matter how many times I refresh the app, the request never disappears. A man named Arjun buys a cheap secondhand security camera from an online marketplace. The seller says it's old but still works. Arjun installs it in his living room to monitor his apartment when he's away. At first, everything seems normal, but the next day he notices something strange. While checking the footage, Arjun sees a clip timestamped 2:15 a.m. In the video, he sees himself dropping a glass in the kitchen. The strange thing is, that event has not happened yet. Later that night at 2:15 a.m., the exact event happens. The glass slips from his hand and breaks, exactly like the camera showed earlier. Arjun realizes something impossible. The camera is showing the future. Curious and scared, he checks the camera every day. Each day it shows tomorrow's footage. At first, the future clips are normal, him making coffee, watching TV, leaving the apartment. But one night, the camera records something disturbing. At 3:04 a.m. tomorrow, the footage shows someone standing inside his apartment. The figure is tall and completely still. Its face is hidden in the darkness. The worst part, in the video, Arjun is sleeping in his bedroom while the figure slowly walks toward his door. Arjun checks every lock in the apartment. Everything is secure. No way someone could get inside. But the camera never lies. It has been correct every time. The next night, Arjun stays awake with all the lights on. He watches the clock slowly approach 3:04 a.m. His heart is racing. 3:01 a.m., 3:02 a.m., 3:03 a.m. The apartment is completely silent. Then suddenly, he hears a noise from the living room. Footsteps, exactly like in the camera footage. Arjun slowly walks toward the living room, but when he looks at the camera monitor, he freezes, because the live camera feed is now showing tomorrow's footage again. And in tomorrow's footage, the same shadow figure is still inside the apartment, but now it's standing right behind Arjun. Some cameras record the past, some record the present, but this one recorded something much worse. 2 years ago, I took a job as a night security guard at a private hospital on the edge of the city. I didn't really want a night job, but the pay was good, and I needed money at the time. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. Most people imagine hospitals as busy places, but late at night they are the opposite. Quiet, almost too quiet. During the day, the hospital was full of doctors, nurses, patients, and visitors. But after midnight, most of the building felt empty. Only a few floors stayed open. The rest were closed and dark. On my first night, the supervisor walked me through the building and explained my job. Most of the shift would be spent watching security cameras in the monitoring room. Every hour, I also had to walk through certain hallways to make sure everything was safe. Before leaving, the supervisor told me something strange. He looked directly at me and said, "Whatever you do, don't go to the third floor after 3 a.m. I laughed a little because I thought he was joking, but he didn't smile. He just repeated it again. "Stay away from the third floor after 3. Then he left the building. At that point, I was alone. The first couple of hours were normal. I sat in the security room watching the camera monitors. There were cameras covering almost every hallway. Nurses walked around doing their work. A few patients were moved between rooms. Everything looked normal. Around 1:30 a.m., the hospital became much quieter. Most of the lights were dimmed. The hallways looked empty. I did my first routine walk around the building. Everything seemed fine. When I came back to the security room, I started feeling sleepy. That's when something strange happened. One of the camera screens flickered, just for a second. I leaned closer to the monitor. The camera was showing the third floor hallway. At first, everything looked empty. Then I noticed something. A person was standing at the far end of the corridor, just standing there, completely still. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Then the person slowly started walking toward the camera, step by step, slow, very slow. I immediately checked the time, 2:47 a.m. I picked up the radio and asked the nurses if anyone was on the third floor. One nurse responded, "Third floor is closed tonight." I looked back at the screen. The person was still walking down the hallway. I assumed maybe a patient had wandered upstairs somehow, so I grabbed my flashlight and decided to check. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. When the doors opened on the third floor, the hallway was completely empty. No footsteps, no voices, no one there. I walked all the way down the corridor. Nothing. Every door was closed. I felt a little embarrassed, thinking maybe I had imagined the figure on the camera. So I went back down to the security room, but when I looked at the monitors again, the figure was still on the third floor camera, walking slowly toward the camera. My stomach dropped, because I had just been there, and there was no one. I zoomed in on the footage. That's when I noticed something disturbing. The figure looked familiar. Same security uniform, same height, same haircut. It looked exactly like me. I leaned closer to the screen. The figure on the camera was walking toward room 307. Then the camera suddenly went black. All the monitors flickered for a moment. Then everything came back on. But the third floor camera now showed an empty hallway, just like before. I checked the clock, 3:02 a.m. That's when I remembered what the supervisor had said. "Don't go to the third floor after 3 a.m. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me, a quiet sound, like a door slowly opening. I turned around quickly. The security room door was slightly open. I was sure I had closed it. I walked over and opened it wider. The hallway outside was dark, completely empty. When I came back to the monitors, one screen had changed. The camera now showed the inside of room 307, and inside the room, there was someone standing in the middle of the floor, wearing my uniform, looking directly at the camera. But the face wasn't normal. It was pale and smiling. That's when the power suddenly went out. Every monitor turned black. The room went completely dark. For a few seconds, I couldn't hear anything except my own breathing. Then my radio turned on by itself. A voice came through the speaker, but it wasn't a nurse, and it wasn't any voice I recognized. It whispered one sentence: "Come to the third floor." I didn't wait another second. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the building. I quit that job the next morning. But the strangest part came later. A few weeks after I left, I spoke to one of the nurses who still worked there. She told me something that made my blood run cold. A security guard who worked the night shift 5 years earlier had disappeared in that hospital. His last patrol was on the third floor, right outside room 307. And according to the security footage, the last person seen walking down that hallway that night looked exactly like me.